the majority of the Supreme Court is being basically called out as sellouts who are willing to take the phone call of Donald Trump at any point in time in the middle of the night. They're getting slammed like I've never seen slammed before in a dissent. Justice Sotomayor with Ketanji Brown Jackson in this case we're going to talk about. Let me just read for you this line because, this is not exactly the types of dissents that I'm used to hearing, but it's appropriate for this moment right now, I think, because you do have the right-wing majority of the Supreme Court basically being on speed dial of Donald Trump saying, I need you to do something. Can you do something for me right now? Here's what it says. In a democracy, power implies responsibility. The greater the power that defies law, the less tolerant can this court be of defiance. As the nation's ultimate judicial tribunal, this court, beyond any other organ of society, is the trustee of law and charged with the duty of securing obedience to it. This court continues to invert those principles. Today's order clarifies only one thing. Other litigants must follow the rules, but the administration has the Supreme Court on speed dial. Respectfully, I dissent. And respectfully there really means F you, I dissent. This case was something that you and I spoke about before, although this ruling is an update to that, where a district court in Massachusetts stayed these 8 migrants who were eventually kind of stuck in Djibouti after the Trump regime wanted to send them to like a concentration camp in Libya. And they were stuck in Djibouti in transit because the stay order happened. And the stay order by the district court's like, hey, just chill. Let's figure this out. There were a lot of rights that are being impacted. These 8 people, if they go to Libya, we probably will never see them again. They may suffer irreparable harm. So let's just make sure before we do third country deportations, let's do it the right way. Pause it. Let's have proceedings. They can be stuck in Djibouti. You can send it back to the United States. If we can go through the right procedure of third country deportations, okay, we'll figure it out. Just assure us you're doing the right procedures. And the Trump regime's like, screw that. Supreme Court on speed dial. We need you. Issue a stay. Block what the district court did, which basically then means if you stay the district court stay, that means we can bring the people to Libya. And then we'll decide what happens later. And you can trust us. We're the executive branch. It's not like they're just going to get lost in Libya. And if ultimately a court rules against us, we're going to say we don't have the power over Libya. We've never done that before. It's literally what they do all of the time. And the Supreme Court's like irreparable harm to the Trump regime, not to the people stuck in Djibouti and the other people getting third country transfers. The Trump regime, you're the one, Donald, you're going to suffer irreparable harm from this. And so there was a big dissent on that case with 3 justices, the liberal justices or the Democratic appointed justices dissented there. But see, then the district court said, even though the Supreme Court ruled that, Harry, I'll let you get into this a little bit. There was nuance to it. And the district court said, I hear that order, but that order still doesn't change the underlying order that we've made here. The Supreme Court didn't really address that. So the Trump regime's like, I'm not satisfied. Hey, Supreme Court, you need to clarify. The district court's wrong. They're wrong, aren't they? And then the right-wing Supreme Court goes, yeah, they're wrong. We're clarifying it again. You send them to Libya. Let's go. Our order was the order that really mattered, and the district court's not complying with what our order is. It's like a tattletale. The district court's got us wrong. And we've just never seen this before. That's why the dissent, I think, captured it so perfectly, that even no one's above the law, although with the Supreme Court giving Trump absolute immunity, their regime's above the law. They never gave, look, I guess if the case involved the executive branch, there's, I guess, some presumptions that these are cases that should be granted certiorari more than other cases. I get that. But it wasn't like Biden could just call into the Supreme Court and get his cases expedited right away. It seems like that's what the Trump regime's getting. Harry, break it all down.
Yeah, well, let's start with what you're saying here, because the Trump administration has had more motions for emergency relief in these 4 months, Trump too, than Biden and Obama had in 8 years. So they do it again and again and again. And it's really the sort of moral of the end of the term here is that the court is going to be really responsive. And indeed, when they say no nationwide injunctions by lower district courts, what they're saying, and Justice Kavanaugh makes this clear, is we'll do it and bring it to us, and we'll do it by our emergency docket with all the problems that has. This opinion, which just issued an hour ago, Ben, what the Supreme Court term is over, isn't it? Yes, but they're disposing of certain things that are there, and they are open for business, as it were, especially when the administration seeks emergency relief. And I would say the summary of all these cases is, and we mean it. They've doubled down on LGBTQ cases, saying, we did this opinion in Skermeti, you rethink this Court of Appeals, and they're doing a series of things. Now, what happened here is there is a nuance. And so, the judge he had entered 2 orders. The administration kind of jerked him around a little, and he entered a second one. And it was there that after getting this from the Supreme Court, the general order, he said, maybe this one is still in play. It's not clear. And it really wasn't clear. The administration, though they trash him in the press as a total infidel Marxist, you name it, their motion was motion for clarification. Please try to tell us that it also covers this second order. And in fact, Justice Kagan, who had dissented the first time around for the reasons you explained, said, yeah, I think it was wrong, but look, that's what we ruled. And when the court overall vacated, that goes to the second order as well. What Sotomayor is saying is, even now, we don't know what the hell the court is talking about. All that the judge did, and as you say, it was pretty measured. He said, bring them back or do it in Djibouti, but they need to have certain notice and opportunity to be heard and time between. It seems like if the court is, we don't know what was on the court's mind, but maybe they think Murphy, the judge, gave him too much time. But Sotomayor says, we still don't know. And come on, you're leaving it in a situation now even where, not having explained it, we don't know what the administration can do. And while we're figuring it out, this is the theme in all these things now with the nationwide injunction case, while it's being figured out, what could that be? A week? A month? 6 months, a year, 2 years? It could be all that time, because it's until the Supreme Court figures it out. You have a regime that could really do very unjust and unconstitutional things, and they'll let them until the Supreme Court, when it decides it's ready to, says what's going on. So that's why Sotomayor is upset, but she is also obviously making a thematic kind of statement that follows with the whole end of the term. That's just this 6-3 juggernaut where they don't even pay attention to any of the arguments on the side of the progressive 3. They give it real back of the hand, and that's sort of where we are now. So Kagan says, okay, we ruled, I agree. And it's otherwise a pretty straightforward, sober kind of thing. This is just clarifying, even though in the press the U.S. had a total conniption, but Sotomayor is still saying, and this goes across the board, man, you're doing it this way, and we don't even know how our judge is going to know, and how are the American people going to know what exactly is animating what you're doing, in particular, why you think it's okay to let possibly lawless regimes that, not to put too fine a point on it, but result in people dying, just stay in place for indefinitely for up to a couple years. This is really topsy-turvy, or just a total abdication of responsibility.
Right. I mean, our audience may hear the term shadow docket, and it is kind of what it seems. In the shadows, they're making rulings. Normally, they're sunlight, not shadows. In the Supreme Court, the parties submit briefs. The court has to grant certiorari just to even accept it in the first place. After the grant, then there are briefs submitted. After the briefs are submitted, it's put on an oral argument docket. The parties show up. They have allocated time. You then have lots of other groups called amicus briefs or amici. They go and they write on behalf of their positions. The court can accept them or not accept them. There's an actual kind of process that takes place in the sunlight. And we can hear, they're on audio recordings. We can go and listen to them. Our viewers and listeners, if you want to go to Oye, Google Oye Supreme Court, they have all of the oral arguments, from the past. But now the Supreme Court saying, we're not going to do oral arguments. We're not going to even listen to these things. We're going to enter rulings. We're not going to tell you what the rulings, we're not even going to really explain our logic. We'll just give you a sentence or two. We'll tell you often granted for whatever Trump wants, without even an explanation what factors. If there's a balancing test, we're not going to explain to you how we balanced irreparable harm versus the merits. We're not even going to go there. We're just going to say granted for Trump. And by the way, we're going to expedite it. So the regime files a request. We just look at it on the papers. We grant an order in favor of Trump, and then it's done. And then that becomes our order. Is it precedent? Is it not? Well, it's clearly not a precedent, but how do we view this relative to other cases? It's a real problem when they do it this way, especially on such substantive issues. Now, Harry, you can make an argument that there are some cases where a shadow docket on a super emergency basis, may make sense, something temporary. That's so super urgent that you can't possibly bring the parties in. Oh my God. But this is not one of those cases. I mean, the people who are in Djibouti, by the way, if they're criminals and third country deportation, I'll support it. I'm not like, I don't know these people. If they're bad people, do what you do to bad people. So sufficient that they get due process, and that they're treated as human beings and all of that. Fine. But don't just be like, here are just some people. You have to go to Libya. Oh, and by the way, don't worry. In 2 years or 3 years, once this is adjudicated, if Trump loses, just call up the Libyan government and get them back. What are we talking about here? What is happening here? And that's why I say we're beyond constitutional crisis. I say we're in dictator mode, and the Supreme Court, to me, looks like the way a Supreme Court functions in a country like Iran or Russia. It is existing. They have robes, but they're more like actors. Kind of play a part. They show up, but it's like, all right, and it's sad because those positions are supposed to be people we respect, but they've, to me, demonstrated that they don't deserve my respect or anybody's respect. Give you the final word.
Okay, a few things, man. We could go on for a long time on this, but so first, you struck a really important point. These shadow dockets come up supposedly in just about temporary relief, but to do temporary relief and to actually change the status quo, there are 4 factors that are important. And the most important, everyone agrees, is likelihood of success. So even though they're not supposed to be precedential, the court having proclaimed who's likely to succeed, it becomes quasi-precedential. But second, that you got to show all 4 to get this relief they get again and again. And one of them is irreparable injury. And give me a friggin' break. The people we're talking about, people who are now detained, they're going to stay detained. Whereas if you release them, you talk about the balance of equities or irreparable injury, completely upending and maybe ending lives, as opposed to what's in it for the U.S. Nothing. They just had to do their proceedings a little bit later. So I think there's a regular theme that the dissents and the progressives are making of like, you're not doing what you're supposed to do when you do this extreme thing. And in particular, you're letting them take a walk on irreparable injury. One other point, because some of these are perfectly cryptic. The worst of them literally just say we grant. That's what happened in the California federalization of the National Guard. You know, we talk a lot, Ben, about how the Supreme Court doesn't have the power to enforce its own rulings and how they're at the mercy possibly of the executive branch, and how maybe the Supreme Court now is all nervous that they're going to make a ruling and Trump will say, screw you, and then where are we, etc. But there's a flip side to all that, which is these 9 people are able to say things, and that becomes, in normal times at least, the law of the land. And why are they able to do that? It's not because they were elected. It's not because they have control of agencies. It's because they are the one branch that reasons and puts out their reasoning for all to judge, the legal academy, the American people. And in a way, when they're making these slapdash fast judgments and not explaining, that's precisely not doing what actually justifies the court in having the power, the considerable power that it has. They have to do it on the basis of reasoning and meet arguments of the dissent. And that's how we evaluate the court. That's what's special about it. And that's what they're sort of abandoning. So in that sense, Sotomayor's broader lament of, you guys are just not acting like a court anymore, you know, there's a lot to it. And historians are going to be wrestling with that in the years to come.
You know, it's something that we're wrestling with now, you and I here, getting the message out. That's why I want people to subscribe to you and your YouTube channel, Talking Feds YouTube, Talking Feds Substack, and the Talking Feds podcast. Wherever you get YouTube videos, search Talking Feds podcast, Substack, just search Talking Feds. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you. And a very quick thing, since we're talking about the court, our current episode is going to drop Monday with Steve Vladek, Melissa Murray, Leah Littman, about the whole court term, with a big discussion of the injunction ruling. So you might want to check that out.
I'll check it out for sure.
Thanks.
And subscribe here.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.